Poor girl exposes trap in contract. CEO's smile disappears as hidden truth is revealed. Maya Patterson stood frozen in the lobby of Havermeyer Marketing, the polished glass facade reflecting her aspirations, yet hinting at the struggles that brought her here. She couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked beneath the firm's shiny exterior. It was a prestigious placement, one she believed could finally lift her family from the clutches of poverty. Her mother's sacrifices, long nights and early mornings, danced as a pinprick in her mind. Was this moment the salvation they both yearned for, or a gilded cage? After a few exhilarating days, the glitter began to dull as she learned the truth. Interns were worked relentlessly, like a machine, without compensation or credit for their efforts. Even her best friend Sarah was entrapped in the vicious cycle, her radiance dimming under the weight of expectation. Guilt twisted in Maya's stomach like a vice. Here she was, so close to achieving her dreams. But at what cost? The gravity of honesty loomed larger. Should she expose the hard truth to save those who toiled beside her, including herself, or preserve her chance at success and the hope it held for her mother? That night, as she lay awake, fatigue gnawed at her. The firm buzzed with ambition, colorful banners fluttering in the breeze. But beneath that, shadows haunted her. Those unsettling documents lay on her desk. Every time she gazed at them, she felt a mix of dread and determination entwining her thoughts. What kind of person was she? A privileged girl fueled by her own desires, or a beacon of integrity willing to challenge a corrupt system? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The following day, the tension coiled around her like a spring. Meetings droned on, but her mind raced with possibilities, the clock ticking louder as she rehearsed what she might say. If she stood before them, lay bare the unfairness crafted by a system she'd been desperate to enter, could she turn the tide in her favor of everyone wronged? Or would she be punished for daring to question the very institution that held newfound power over her life? As she took her seat for what felt like the apex of her journey, her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. Would speaking up shatter her dreams, or pave the way for retribution? The boardroom glistened with wealth and success, but Maya felt like an outsider. The glances from executives, a mixture of skepticism and condescension, cut through her resolve. The weight was unbearable as she climbed the verbal mountain before her. Her pulse quickened at the mere thought of them dismissing her, but she carried a spark inside. It was time. As she stood to speak, her breath caught, and she noted John's steady gaze. This was it. His confident smirk had evaporated as she prepared to unveil the truth, ready to expose the darkness veiled by their prosperity. And just as she took a breath to speak, a board member's expression shifted, the silent understanding of unspoken consequences ready to explode, tightening the noose around her heart and sending shockwaves through the room. The moment hung delicately, shimmering with uncertainty. Would this moment release her from her shackles, or bind her forever to their greed? Maya's words faltered, her courage wavering in the face of scrutiny that felt so tangible it suffocated her. She could feel the silence stretching out, every split second dragging like an eternity. Her mind frantically sifted through the risks, each possibility igniting a war within her. Would they ridicule her, fire her on the spot, or possibly recognize her bravery? The shimmering allure of success began to pale against the reality of the room's palpable tension. But beneath the fear, something else stirred, a fierce determination blooming within her, a defiance against the very machinations that had led her to this juncture. She recalled her mother's sacrifices, the relentless hope she instilled in Maya through her own struggles. With that thought, she found her voice again, unwavering amidst the chaos. "Thank you for the opportunity to speak," she began, the quiver in her voice settling into firmness. "I know I'm new here, but I've come to recognize a flaw in our internship program that merits discussion." The boardroom was still, every eye fixed on her, some faces reflecting surprise while others wore thinly veiled disdain. "It seems we're fostering a system that exploits eager young professionals, interns who work unimaginably hard with no compensation or acknowledgement. This needs to change," she pressed, the words flowing from her as if they had always been there, waiting for the right moment to escape her lips. Each sentence crystallized her resolve. John's expression transformed, the condescension giving way to caution. What had begun as a threat to her aspirations quickly morphed into a poignant challenge echoing throughout the room. Slowly, murmurs began to ripple amongst board members, the atmosphere charged with deliberation. But Maya's own thoughts spiraled in response to her boldness. Doubt crept in as she took in the mixed reactions from colleagues around her. Would this truly benefit them, or had she just painted a target on her back? While fighting through the rising tide of anxiety, she noticed Sarah's encouraging nod from across the room. That small gesture was vital. It anchored Maya's resolve. Many of us are here, not to simply fill spaces, but to drive innovation, to learn, and to grow. Denying us access to real-world experiences under the guise of internship does us a disservice. We have value that deserves recognition. Each word articulated her latent anger for herself and her peers. As she spoke, the initial weight of fear lightened, replaced with a stirring impulse to be heard, to assert not just her dream but the dreams of many who felt silenced. Yet, as she reached the climax of her impassioned plea, the board chairman, a man clad in tailored arrogance, interrupted with an affronted posture. "Maya, while I appreciate your passion, you must understand that with success comes sacrifice. Our policies are in place for a reason." His tone dismissed her as though swatting away a fly. "But at what cost?" Maya interjected, the words bursting forth with an urgency she hadn't anticipated. "At the expense of our mental health? Our futures? If we want to innovate, we need a system that supports its talent, not crush it." The boardroom grew turbulent, responses bubbling up from different corners, some supportive, others hostile. Each reaction felt like a knife twisting in her gut, each moment feeding her uncertainty about her choice. As the murmurs amplified, the chairman's frown deepened, contrasting with Sarah's lingering smile. The stakes were escalating, the consequences escalating as well. For Maya, the next hours would not solely involve navigating her immediate future. They represented a turning point that could alter everything she had fought for. And just then, a phone buzzed ominously across the sleek table, the digital chime signaling an urgent message. All heads turned toward it, and sensing the shift in focus, a chill crept down Maya's spine. An unexpected twist awaited her, threatening to pull the rug from beneath her newfound conviction. What would the message reveal? Would it be the end of her fight, or the beginning of a far greater challenge? The message lingered in the air, heavy with implication as the board members exchanged glances. Maya's heart raced, a cascade of apprehension bottling up her throat. She felt exposed, as if the very walls were closing in on her. But amid this claustrophobic panic, a new resolve began to catch fire. Whatever that message entailed, it was bound to unveil something that could either shatter her position or catapult her into the forefront of a necessary change. The chairman picked up the device, his brow furrowing as he read the notification. Maya's eyes darted between the faces in the room, spotting the cacophony of expressions: curiosity, irritation, and, in Sarah's case, a thinly veiled excitement. Nothing could prepare her for what might come next, yet she knew she had crossed a threshold. The voice she had discovered wouldn't be diminished easily. "Excuse me a moment," he finally said, affording Maya a sharp glare, as if accusing her of stirring the pot intentionally. She fought back the instinct to shrink under his scrutiny, trying instead to channel the defiance that had sparked her initial outburst. "Maya, you're clearly passionate about this," he continued, turning slightly away to dismissively address her as he stood. "But I urge you to be mindful when discussing what you do not fully understand." In that moment, Maya felt a sudden crackle of audacity surge through her. The boardroom doors closed with a resounding thud behind him. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The board members seemed reluctant to pick up the threads of the conversation again. It was as if his departure had stripped the confidence from the air, leaving hesitation to swirl around Maya like a smokescreen. Determined not to let the moment slip away, she leaned forward, the tension in her shoulders resolved into a newfound anchor. "We need to address the implications of these policies," she pressed on, her voice carrying authority despite the tremor in her palms. "Change doesn't come from comfort. It requires confrontation." The murmurs reignited, and this time her colleagues appeared more intrigued than they were before. A senior intern, Carlos, spoke up, a hint of encouragement in his tone. "She's right. For too long we've accepted these conditions without question. Maybe it's time we reassessed our situation." "Yes," Maya chimed in. "If we have to endure this so-called sacrifice, then why should we settle for anything less than fair recognition and training?" Each word ignited a flicker of hope within her, feeding off the growing camaraderie in the room. By the time the chairman returned, her words had started to weave a narrative of collective empowerment, a stark contrast to the initial vulnerability that had almost suffocated her. I suggest a restructuring of our internship frameworks to ensure that merit and effort are rewarded, she announced, her voice firm, standing taller in her own shoes. The board members shot one another quizzical looks. The tides had shifted. Some appeared contemplative, possibly seeing the merit in Maya's proposal, while others appeared more entrenched and hostile. As the chairman's gaze traversed the group, his expression hardened. "This isn't a democracy. These policies exist for valid reasons," he insisted, a warning threaded in his words. "But what if these reasons aren't standing on a foundation of fairness?" Maya countered, feeling the adrenaline surging through her. An internal war raged inside her. The risk of retaliation loomed, but she couldn't let fear stifle her momentum. The boardroom's tension thickened again, now laden with questions of loyalty versus ethics, authority versus responsibility. The unspooled threads of doubt threatened to bind her resolve. Was she risking everything only to wind up on the losing end? The chairman exhaled sharply. "You really want to tread this path?" The unspoken threat hung in the air. The stakes were visibly rising. Each unyielding heartbeat felt like a countdown to a decision point that would define her destiny. As he leaned forward, something in Maya shifted. Behind the walls of the boardroom, in the privacy of her mind, she knew this was just the beginning of a much larger confrontation. "Maya, we might have to revisit the terms of your internship," he warned, but she held her ground, a resoluteness enveloping her entirely. The moment felt charged. Every eye awaited her response. "I'll fight for what's right," she declared, her voice unwavering, a spark as bright as the fire in her heart. And as she finished speaking, she felt the echoes of her resolve ricocheting back at her, a mirror of her deepest convictions. What lay ahead was unknown, but she felt the threads of her destiny beginning to weave a tapestry she had long yearned for. Yet, as the vibrations of her words settled throughout the boardroom, she realized there was still an uncertainty lingering in the shadows. Was the shift she had initiated merely an illusion, or did it herald the beginning of her true empowerment? With every word she spoken, a further confrontation loomed ominously on the horizon, a reckoning she could not yet fathom. Maya stood at the edge of a precipice, the atmosphere around her thick with uncertainty. As the chairman's challenging gaze bore down on her like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury, she weighed her next words carefully. The energy in the room was electric, a tight coil of tension and possibility that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She could feel the collective breath of her colleagues held tight, a subtle acknowledgement of the pivotal nature of this moment. "Yes," she finally said, steeling herself against the potentially disastrous consequences. "Let's discuss the hidden policies and unfair expectations masquerading as industry standards. Ignoring reality only prolongs our suffering." Those last words hung in the air, their implications stark and haunting. The chairman's expression shifted momentarily, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. He had anticipated compliance, even fear, but not this fierce resistance. This unexpected defiance was a signal, a call to arms for those around her. She glanced at Sarah, whose excitement now seemed uncontainable, and Carlos, who nodded in tacit approval. "You think you're special, Maya? That you can incite this kind of insubordination and come out unscathed?" The chairman retorted, his voice laced with venom, but Maya could sense the cracks beginning to form in his authority. Maya considered her response. It wasn't just about being seen or heard. It was about carving out a space where her colleagues could express themselves too. "I think we all need to question the status quo," she replied, each word infused with the weight of her own experiences and frustrations. The moment felt fluid, as if it were filled with potential, the sighs and murmurs around her indicating a subtle shift in momentum. Rumblings of agreement began to ripple across the table, confidence seeping in through the cracks of established norms. Maya felt her own fear morph into courage. It was exhilarating, adrenaline coursing through her veins. But amid that exhilarating rush, a question echoed within her. What was she willing to risk for this newfound clarity? As the chairman attempted to regain control, countering with practiced authority, Maya wanted to scream, to shake him and everyone else until they understood the urgency of her message. It wasn't just the hollow noise of policy they were debating. It was their lives, their futures, and the invisible chains that restrained their ambitions. The board meeting reached a fever pitch. Voices were raised, some challenging the chairman. Others were softer, cloaked in doubt but no longer entirely silent. It was a chaotic symphony of cowardice and bravery intermingled, with Maya standing at the center, an unlikely conductor. "You can fight it all you want, but I'm standing firm," she declared. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, every beat a reminder that she was not the girl who had entered this boardroom wide-eyed and uncertain. She was growing, evolving. The transformation ignited within her was real. It became clear she wasn't merely advocating for her peers. She was cultivating her own sense of agency. A voice broke through the din, icy and clinical. "Maya, remember what you signed. Your position is precarious. You jeopardize not only your role, but the futures of those who quietly stand behind you." The chairman cautioned, his tone laden with foreboding. The weight of that warning settled around her, threatening to drown her in doubt. Did everyone feel the same lust for change she did, or were they merely appeased by the idea of it? Maya's mind raced, confronted by a challenging truth. She had ignited something in others. However, the fire could quickly turn to ashes if she stumbled. She needed a plan. Engaging the board was one thing. Executing tangible change was another entirely. Unease gnawed at her thoughts, a feeling of impending consequence simmering just beneath her resolve. Gritting her teeth, Maya resolved to strategize beyond this meeting. The chairman's threat wouldn't be ignored. It no longer felt like she was merely attempting to initiate a dialogue. She was stepping onto a battlefield, and she needed allies. But as she glanced around the table, she couldn't shake the feeling that not everyone in the room was on her side, and the realization dawned on her with a chilling clarity. What was hidden in the depths of that seemingly routine contract? Omens of deeper conflict loomed larger than ever as she prepared to confront the second phase of her battle, a clash not just with the chairman, but possibly with the very structure of her aspirations. She inhaled, bracing herself for the fight to come, betrayal and allies swirling in the same dangerous current, leaving her poised on the brink of a potential breakthrough, or collapse. Maya exited the boardroom, the weight of the chairman's threat heavy on her shoulders. The adrenaline that had once fueled her confidence now wove threads of anxiety into her resolve. She felt like a tiny boat navigating through fierce currents, uncertain of whether she would find solid ground or be capsized by the tides of corporate machinations. With each step down the corridor, she replayed the meeting in her mind, scrutinizing every decision she had made. Her heart still raced, but with each push against the metal door, a flicker of determination sparked within her. Adrenaline morphed into clarity. She wouldn't be a mere spectator to the unfolding drama. No, she was instigator and warrior, poised for battle. Reaching her desk, she sat in front of her laptop. The cold glow of the screen was oddly comforting. Maya needed information, a strategy, anything that would bolster her position or reveal hidden traps linked to the chairman's warning. She began searching through layers of company policy documents, employee contracts, dispute cases. It felt like sifting through a dense fog in search of the truth. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her thoughts racing alongside them. She could feel the fire of resolve simmering in her abdomen. She wouldn't allow herself to be blindsided again. The potential ramifications of her confrontation loomed larger than she wished to acknowledge, but a nagging sense of purpose propelled her forward. After hours of digging, she stumbled upon something significant buried amidst the legal jargon, a clause that stipulated that annual bonuses could be rescinded in instances deemed detrimental to the company's reputation. It was vague, but loaded with power. The word detrimental echoed ominously in her mind. Suddenly she grasped the gravity of the chairman's warnings. Failure was not just a personal risk for her, it could spell disaster for everyone, especially those whose voices had started to emerge in the wake of her defiance. Maya leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding with foreboding. This revelation meant that the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. It wasn't simply a confrontation against an authority figure. It was an intricate web of survival tied to a predatory system that thrived on compliance and silence. The chairman's power lay not just in his position, but also in his strategic use of fear and uncertainty. Were her colleagues truly with her, or were they using her as a shield? Questions flooded her mind. Sarah and Carlos, had they committed to this fight, or were they merely caught in the momentum of her determination? Doubt mingled with her ambition, forcing her to confront the unsettling possibility that she might be carrying the weight of this battle alone. She resolved to find out where they truly stood. Picking up her phone, she swiped through her contacts until she landed on Sarah's name. This was not merely a professional interaction. It was a lifeline woven from genuine connection. As the call rang, apprehension coursed through her, but she pushed it down, forcing herself to focus. "Sarah, I need to meet with you. It's urgent." The gravity in her voice was unmistakable. "Everything okay?" Sarah replied, concern lacing her tone. "I found something in the contracts. We need to talk strategy, and I need your input. This isn't just about us anymore." The silence hung heavily on the other end, punctuating the significance of her words. "Okay, I'll be there. But Maya, I'm with you. Just say the word." Maya felt a flicker of warmth but swiftly extinguished it, understanding that hope alone wouldn't make a difference. She had to lay out a plan, one that could transform her defiance into actionable change. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in her office, Maya felt herself teetering on the edge of something profound. She had ignited a flicker of resistance, but would it yield a movement, or would it be snuffed out before it could gain momentum? Raising her head, she stared out the window, wondering if the chairman was watching, calculating his next move like a chess master. She had awakened a battle, but how far was she willing to go to win? Her heart raced and her hands clenched around the edges of her desk. Just as the weight of her thoughts settled in a dark cloud of uncertainty, a sound at her door distracted her. It was Carlos, stepping in cautiously, but determination written across his face. "The time has come to face the chairman," he said, as the door closed behind him. Just as Maya prepared to articulate her plan, his phone chimed, a message that would shatter the tenuous balance they had just established. What if it was the final piece of evidence she needed, or the beginning of exposing deeper deceit? Maya's eyes fixated on Carlos, who remained neutral, yet determination simmered beneath his surface. She couldn't afford any more distractions. "What's the message?" she demanded, urgency sharpening her voice. He hesitated, glancing at the screen before sliding the phone toward her. "It's from Sarah. She says there's been an unexpected shift in the board's perspective, and they're discussing our team's decisions." Maya's pulse quickened. Would they backtrack? Were they retreating into self-preservation? She fought to suppress the rising tide of panic. Did she say what they are considering? Maya needed clarity, a focused perspective to harness this development into a strategy rather than a setback. "Just that they expect us to respond to the chairman's queries," Carlos said, his voice filled with an odd mix of concern and support. "She's worried about the fallout from your earlier confrontation. If they pressure us to retract our statements, you know what that would mean for us and our allies in this company." Maya felt a whirlwind of thoughts spiral through her mind, each one raising the stakes higher. She needed a plan, not just a response but an action that could alter the game. "What if we turn this around?" she proposed, grabbing onto an adrenaline-fueled idea. "If they're watching us react, we can seize the initiative. We can frame the narrative before they do." Carlos raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. "You mean going public with what you've found?" "No, not yet." Maya's mind raced. She needed her assertions fortified, a wall of truth behind which they could shield themselves. "We need to gather our allies and confront the board with the information I found. Show them that the chairman's threats are empty, manipulations to control us." Carlos nodded slowly, digesting her words. "But what if they shift blame on us for creating a culture of dissent? We need to tread carefully, show strength, but protect our own reputations." "I understand." Maya took a deep breath, the sharpness of Carlos's reasoning cutting through her earlier impulsiveness. "We'll need to be strategic, gather any evidence others have against the chairman's decisions. That way, we reshape how the board perceives us." Just then, Sarah pushed through the door, her brow furrowed, blue eyes shimmering with intensity. "What's happened?" she asked, taking in the tension between Maya and Carlos. Maya wasted no time. "We need a plan and fast. The chairman is playing a dangerous game, and we can't let it cost us our positions, or our integrity." Eagerness ignited Sarah's features. "I've been talking to a few team members. They're scared, but they trust us. If we provide a few concrete examples of mismanagement, we can block the chairman. He's overstepping his bounds." Maya felt an exhilarating rush of empowerment. It was a team effort, and the momentum of their small alliance could disrupt the power dynamics. "We need to ensure everyone's on the same page. If they push back, we have to be ready to stand our ground." As they huddled closer, Maya's mind began to map out the framework of a plan. The stakes were clear. They would have to showcase their unity, not just for survival, but as challengers within the company's structure. Each piece clicked into place like a puzzle coming together. Colleagues, strategists. "Time is of the essence," Maya said firmly. "We approach the board together, and we demand transparency." Each word fell with increased resonance as clarity overpowered fear. Moments later, Carlos's phone chimed again, this time with a message alert from a board meeting invitation. "It's during lunch tomorrow," he announced, tension restoring to the air as they exchanged cautious glances. "The time to solidify our plan is now," Sarah proclaimed, her voice brimming with conviction. But beneath her newfound focus lay a lingering doubt. Would the board be as receptive as they hoped? What if conflict arose, fracturing their fragile alliance? Was Maya risking everything for a chance to stand her ground? "Prepare for battle," she commanded, sensing the weight of her leadership looming heavily upon her shoulders. Together they would face the scrutiny of their colleagues, the looming threat of the chairman, and potentially the future of their own careers. As they strategized, the room enveloped them in palpable tension, echoing the uncertainty of the corporate chess game they were about to engage in. The final pieces of their plan had yet to be drawn, and with it, the stakes continued to rise. What truths would surface in the upcoming confrontation, and would their alliance withstand the force of corporate pressure? Maya stood at the window, the city buzzing beneath her, and felt a pulse of anxiety beat in her chest. She recalled the frantic energy of her huddle with Carlos and Sarah. What would happen when they confronted the board? They were betting everything on a fragile alliance and an untested strategy. The message from Sarah lingered in her mind like an unanswered question. Could they really turn the tide? As she watched the streets teeming with life, a thought struck her. This was more than just about saving her position. It was about integrity. It was a battle between truth and manipulation. For the first time, Maya felt an inkling of her own potential simmering just beneath the surface, waiting to be unleashed. She realized she had to cultivate this newfound courage to navigate the storm ahead. Returning to her desk, Maya opened her laptop to revisit her findings. The data collected from her research was substantial, but incredibly nuanced. She needed to sharpen her arguments and highlight the chairman's inconsistencies without leaving any room for counterattacks. Being adversarial would be risky, yet they had to be unequivocal. If they were embroiled in blame, they couldn't afford to appear hostile. Gathering her notes, Maya carefully outlined her points. "Breathe," she reminded herself. Each breath sparked determination, pushing her to focus entirely on her mission. Carlos and Sarah entered, their faces flaring with a mix of resolve and dread. "All right, what's the plan?" Carlos asked. Maya could see the tension etched in his features. "We provide evidence, specific instances where the chairman's decisions negatively affected our projects. But more importantly, we need to show our commitment to accountability." "Are you suggesting we cast a wide net?" Sarah inquired, her brow knitted with concern. "It's the only way we can frame the narrative. We have to show that we're not just a bunch of dissenters. We're champions of the company's potential and integrity. If we don't do this right, we risk being branded as just a loud faction." Her tone was steady, the resolve palpable. Carlos nodded, his initial skepticism melting into cautious enthusiasm. "So we balance our findings with a proactive stance? Show we're committed to solving issues?" "Exactly," Maya affirmed. "Let's demonstrate that we're a part of the solution, not the problem. It's about legitimacy." They began to refine their arguments, stitching together her observations with practical solutions. The atmosphere in the room began to shift as ideas flowed. Each proposal ignited a flicker of hope in Maya's heart. The undeniable unity of their small group began to weave a stronger thread of determination. As the conversation intensified, Maya noticed an internal clash. Questions bubbled. Would this really work? Doubts had started to creep in, but she clamped down on the unease. They had the numbers. They could back up their positions with formal data. This was an opportunity for growth, not just for her career but for validating her own convictions. But beyond her professional motivations, something more poignant emerged. Maya felt alive, empowered in ways she hadn't known before, not just fighting for her place at the table, but for creating change within the organization. In that moment of clarity, she recognized something fundamental within herself. The confrontation with the board was not merely a trial, it was a defining moment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky vibrant hues, she sensed the shift in herself, a realization that she was not just a pawn in the game, but an unexpected player. "Let's take control of our narrative," she stated, her voice firm as if sealing their collective determination. As they finalized their plan, the weight of impending uncertainty bore down on her. Would they gain the upper hand? Could they withstand the chairman's counterattack? In the silence that followed, the looming conclusion of their preparation hung like a coiled spring ready to snap. Maya's heart raced, not just with fear of what was to come, but with exhilaration for the battle ahead. The board meeting was only hours away. What reaction awaited them behind closed doors, and how would Maya confront the chairman amidst the rising stakes of corporate warfare? As the first rays of sunlight crept through the blinds, casting elongated shadows across her desk, Maya felt the gravity of the day press upon her shoulders. She had barely slept, her mind a whirl with strategies and contingencies. Today was about more than just survival. It was a pivotal moment to demonstrate her newfound strength and commitment to integrity. She arrived at the office early, the sterile air thick with apprehension. Each step toward the boardroom was laden with an amalgamation of fear and determination. Maya's heart raced as she mentally rehearsed her points. She had done her homework, scrutinized the numbers, and crafted her arguments meticulously. However, the ticking clock reminded her of the uncertainty that still loomed over their heads. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Carlos remarked, trying to break the tension in the air as they gathered in the corridor outside the boardroom. Jaunty tones of bravado cloaked the anxiety swirling beneath. "We're taking a stand, Carlos. We're worth more than these token meetings," Maya replied, her voice steady but laced with undercurrents of worry. When Sarah joined them, a palpable energy settled in. "Focus on the facts, but don't forget the emotion. We're not just numbers. This is our lives," she urged, her brows furrowing. In that moment, Maya felt the weight of responsibility hit her again. What would happen if they failed? What would happen if they succeeded? She had read enough business literature to know that the dichotomy of success and failure in corporate environments often hinged on perception as much as performance. The three stood at the door, exchanging determined glances. "Ready?" Carlos asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya took a deep breath, grounding herself. "Let's go. We're here to set the record straight." Pushing the door open, the stark contrast of the boardroom welcomed them. Polished wood, sleek chairs, and the intimidating figure of the chairman, Henry Lin, poised at the head of the table, a mask of calm. "Nice of you to join us," Lin smirked, the edges of his lips curling in a condescending fashion. Maya felt a simmer of frustration rise. He had no idea what they were capable of. Taking their seats, Maya opened her laptop and presented her first slide, a simple yet powerful visual showcasing the discrepancies in the company's recent financial decision-making. As she elaborated on the basis of her findings, evidence of projects that had stalled under Lin's leadership, she noticed the chairman's expression shift. The air thickened as she articulated each point, amplifying her voice with authority she never fully recognized she possessed. "And as you can see, the impact on our bottom line has been detrimental," she concluded, her gaze steady, locking eyes with Lin. For a moment she reveled in the sense of control she felt, but it was fleeting as Lin's piercing stare cut through her defenses. "Your data is impressive, but correlation does not equal causation," he retorted, his tone dripping with derision. "What do you really want, Maya? An explanation of the obvious?" "On the contrary," Maya countered, her heart pounding, adrenaline rushing through her veins. "I want accountability. It's not just about numbers. It's about taking responsibility for decisions impacting lives and careers. If we are to have integrity, then we must own our choices, and so should you." Her pulse surged. This was it, the moment she decided to confront not only him, but the insecurity she had harbored for too long. An unexpected silence enveloped the room as her words hung heavily in the air. The stakes had elevated. It was more than a battle of wits. It was a battle for her own self-worth. Maya braced for Lin's inevitable rebuttal, yet as she glanced at Carlos and Sarah, she saw a spark of solidarity in their expressions. They were in this together, a feeling she hadn't fully appreciated until now. "Let's discuss the ramifications of our collective decisions moving forward," Lin said, his previous arrogance wavering. Maya leaned forward, knowing this was but a small victory in a much larger war. But as she prepared her next argument, a nagging doubt crept in. Could they sustain this momentum against Lin's calculated counterstrikes? With each passing moment, the tension mounted. What hidden strategies did Lin have up his sleeve, and what would unfold when the facade of civility wore thin in the battle for leadership? Maya could feel the gravity of Lin's gaze pressing upon her, thick with both the weight of expectation and the sharp edge of condescension. As he shifted slightly in his chair, drawing in a breath that hinted at dismissal, she felt her focus sharpen. The stakes were rising, not merely the fate of her team, but her emerging identity as a decisive leader. "Let's cut to the chase," Lin said, tilting his head slightly, as if the very act of discussing accountability was too tedious for his taste. "Your team wishes to ignore the complexities of real business. We operate in a world where both risks and rewards are unpredictable. That's what makes us successful." Maya seized the moment, her voice steady and firm. "Success shouldn't come at the expense of integrity. The details in your financial decisions reveal an alarming pattern, one that could jeopardize not just profits, but the very foundation of our company's values. If you're willing to overlook this now, what will stop you from repeating the mistake?" She scanned the room, searching for allies. Carlos's clenched fists and Sarah's subtle nod reassured her she wasn't alone in this altercation. Each reinforced her belief that this dialogue required fortitude and clarity. Lin, however, was unfazed. "You're naive, Maya. The boardroom isn't a platform for idealism. It's a battleground for survival. Each of us here knows that sacrifices must be made. Can you say you'll be the one to take the first leap?" His voice dripped with the confidence of a seasoned player. Yet Maya detected a sliver of uncertainty in his response. It invigorated her. Even a calculated leap can be reckless when based on misinformation. Maya clicked to her next slide, highlighting the contrast in projected versus actual outcomes of the last 3 quarters. The figures were stark. The trend lines dipped downward in sharp intervals. It was an indictment against Lin's strategy, and for the first time, the tension crackled in her favor. She framed her words carefully, intent on dismantling his perspective without revealing her own vulnerabilities. "Numbers don't lie, and it's our duty to confront uncomfortable truths," she stated decisively, letting the silence fill the room again. What she wanted was clarity, a recognition of their shared responsibility to the company's integrity. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, transforming dread into purpose. Henry Lin leaned back, clasping his hands together, a smirk returning to his face. "And what would you propose, Maya? A mass overhaul? Restructuring our leadership on the whims of your team?" "Not a whim. It's a necessity," Maya countered, her mind racing to formulate a response that would compel not just Lin, but the entire board. "I suggest an independent review of our financial strategies. Accountability needs a solid foundation. Let's put it to the test and see if we can direct our resources toward restoring our company's values." The flicker of interest crossed Lin's expression, but he quickly masked it, busking confidence instead. "Very bold of you, but what if, hypothetically speaking, you're wrong? Would you risk everyone's job, including your own?" Maya felt a bead of sweat trickle down her spine as she considered the implications of her suggestion. It was one thing to challenge him, another to put her future on the line. Yet what choice did she have? If nothing changed, the company, and their livelihoods, were at stake. "Everything in business comes with risk, Henry. But living in fear of taking the right steps is far more dangerous." She straightened her back, feeling the resolve crystallize in her chest. "If we want to win over our stakeholders and restore trust, we need to act with transparency. Otherwise, we'd be selling ourselves short." The room remained taut with anticipation, an electric hum evident among her colleagues. Lin's demeanor shifted slightly, the mirth fading from his expression. "You have a lot of conviction, Maya, but you are playing a dangerous game," he warned, his voice low and threatening. "Be prepared for the backlash." With those words lingering in the air, the tension morphed from mere pressure into a tangible threat. Maya felt the pulse of her ambition quicken. If she was to lead her team out of this quagmire, she would need to harness their collective strength and confront Lin's contempt head-on. As her mind raced through possible predicaments, she caught a glimpse of Lin's eyes, calculating, evaluating, searching for weaknesses. How far was he willing to go to protect his interests? Then let the game begin, Maya thought, her heart pounding with the thrill of the challenge, ready to decode the unfolding dynamic of power and vulnerability. But as she prepared for the next volley, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What hidden alliances existed within the boardroom? Whose loyalty was still untested? A new wave of doubt settled in her stomach. This battle was far from over, and the next move could be her most crucial yet. Maya took a deep breath, centering herself as the tension in the boardroom solidified into an electric atmosphere. She felt moments away from defining not only the trajectory of her career, but also the integrity of the values she cherished. The stakes were drastically high. Personal risk was no longer abstract, but a concrete truth she had to confront. With her laptop open, she stood poised to present the culmination of her work, a portfolio of strategic proposals designed not just to confront the board's malpractices, but to establish a clear path forward. If accountability garners prominence in our values, she began, her voice embodying stability, then our first step must be the commitment to transparency, beginning with an independent external audit. She watched as eyes shifted around the room, some filled with skepticism, others hinting at intrigue. Lin leaned back, his expression a mask of dismissiveness, yet beneath it, Maya sensed a flicker of concern. This wasn't just about data, it was about reigniting the essence of purpose that should have guided their decisions. Failing to adapt in the face of adversity only exacerbates our vulnerabilities, she continued. If we cling tightly to past success, we may overlook critical shifts in market dynamics. If we are to be champions of innovation, we must resonate with authenticity. The room fell silent. She had exposed the paradox that had thrived within the walls of Havermeyer Marketing. It struck at the heart of their collective ambitions and fears, all while exacerbating the precarious balance between risk and recognition. "You are imposing a great deal of pressure over family," Lin fired back, his voice tinged with irritation. Such a request could damage relationships built over decades. "Not if the outcome is rooted in trust," Maya challenged back, emboldened by the solidarity simmering around her, with Carlos's steady nod and Sarah's encouraging smile lending their weight to her declaration. Lin sat forward, gauging the room's response. "And how do you anticipate we achieve this without alienating our seasoned professionals, including myself? How do you propose we retain their respect while allowing the status quo to diminish our potential?" Maya shot back, the conflict within her hardening into purpose. The tension shifted. Murmurs arose as colleagues seemed more receptive to the unfolding dialogue. This was it, the moment to challenge not just Lin, but every barrier that had marginalized their voices. "Have we forgotten what we stood for? By championing substantive change, we not only elevate our practices but honor the dedication of every person sitting around this table," she asserted. The room hummed as various opinions collided, both favoring and opposing her stance. Each argument she faced intensified her resolve to consolidate the fragmented perspectives into a singular narrative of empowerment. Lin, however, masked displeasure beneath a veneer of authority. "You are young, Maya," he said dismissively, "and still learning the nuances of the corporate world. You may find such boldness to be detrimental to your aspirations." A pang of doubt clawed at her, but beneath that uncertainty blazed the determination to stand her ground. "No more detriments. We need to dare to envision a future where courage is the currency of trust in leadership," she replied, fighting back with unwavering conviction. The unexpected glint of agreement from one of the board members broke through the wall of apprehension. "She's right. The company's longevity lies in our ability to evolve. Blind loyalty won't sustain us." Others began to murmur in agreement, voices trailing into a cacophony that flowed through the undercurrent of uncertainty. Maya savored the moment. Just as the tides began to turn, Lin's smirk broke down into frustration. "Then let's entertain your proposal, simply as a gesture to satisfy your enthusiasm," he retorted, unable to mask his ire. "But understand this, failure is not an option, and I will hold everyone accountable should this venture falter." Each word from him felt like a dagger, but they only served to fuel Maya's determination. "Then we will support you in making the right choices, holding each other accountable collectively," she affirmed, rallying her allies. The conflict had transformed into a crucible of resilience, and as her colleagues bolstered her claim with their voices, an exhilarating rush surged through her. They were inextricably woven together, each person empowering the other in a palpable display of unity. Hours later, as the meeting concluded with a tentative agreement for future discussions, Maya took a moment to step outside the boardroom. She breathed deeply into the silence, a stark contrast from the electric tension that had dominated the room moments before. She felt the weight of her burgeoning leadership. It was neither just her fight nor a solitary battle. It had become a shared journey, a powerful narrative still evolving. The collective voices of those behind her had amplified her own, crafting a bond woven in trust and purpose. Maya returned to her desk, exhilarated and transformed. Alongside Carlos and Sarah, she had managed to leverage their strengths while forging relationships built on accountability. Each interaction held deeper meaning. They were no longer mere colleagues but allies on a shared path, determined to uphold integrity against a backdrop of corporate complacency. Over the following weeks, the seeds they had planted multiplied, as discussions began to ripple across the firm. Changes in policy were proposed, the initiative gathering momentum, and with it came an unshakable sense of fulfillment. Recognition for their contributions began pouring in, a reward Maya had longed for, yet never fully grasped until now. As she stood in her new office, receiving accolades for both her courage and contributions, she realized the significance of the journey was rooted in overcoming fear, while forging connections through shared aspirations. In the reflection of her once dimmed path to success now brightly illuminated, Maya finally felt the confidence that had evaded her, cultivated through authenticity and unwavering dedication. This success didn't just lift her out of the shadows, it illuminated a pathway for others. Her journey had redefined her. A girl who once feared her inadequacies had now emerged as a leader equipped with the strength to inspire others. In this transformative realization, Maya embraced her achievement with profound clarity. She had not only conquered the challenges laid before her, she had woven a narrative that promised change long overdue, demonstrating that true success lies in the connections made along the journey of integrity. It was time for all those who resonate with the necessity of change to step forward and rally together. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Let's inspire change together.